Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for CMO Priorities in 2025, Integrating AI and Proving ROI, made possible today by Ground Truth. I'm Kelsey Voss, joining in from Seattle, and I am a principal analyst at eMarketer, specializing in B2B marketing trends and forecasts. And this year, I've had the honor of starting a new CMO report series called Leading with Confidence. In this series, we interviewed CMOs on a range of topics and gathered their real-world insights, advice, and effective strategies to share with their peers. So today, we'll dive into what's top of mind for CMOs in the coming year, focusing on strategies to optimize ROI and how CMOs and their teams plan to implement and use AI tools in 2025. Joining me today are Laura Brooks, fractional CMO for Made by Nacho, joining us from St. Louis. Welcome, Laura.
Hi, Kelsey. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you. And John Solomon, CMO at Therabody, joining us from Los Angeles. Welcome, John.
Hi, Kelsey. Great to be here.
Great. Both Laura and John were contributors to the CMO series, so thank you very much. And we are pleased to have Brandon Roten, CMO at Ground Truth, joining us today from Cincinnati. Welcome, Brandon.
Excited to be here.
Before we begin, let us know in the chat where you're tuning in from. Also, if you have questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat throughout the session. Our MCs, Susie and Jeremy, along with a special guest, will return later on and take your questions. So let's get started by exploring how your marketing efforts can continue to drive value and maximize ROI in 2025, despite challenges such as pressures for accountability, balancing creativity with revenue growth, and the incredibly rapid pace of technological, market, and consumer changes. So my first question is to Laura. How do you approach budget allocation during periods of economic or other market uncertainties?
This is a great question. I'd say a common approach that we see during these economic downturns is to cut those upper funnel tactics, things like connected TV, brand awareness influencers, these things that typically show a weaker direct ROI. They're often sacrificed in favor of those lower funnel conversion-focused tactics that have a clear measurable impact. But I really believe that this is very short-sighted. So I've read studies that say consumers need to see a brand anywhere from 7 to 13 times before they make a purchase. So if you simply eliminate these upper funnel tactics, that can degrade the integrity of all those lower funnel tactics. I'm going to give you an example. So you see an ad on YouTube B-roll. You are chomping at the bit for those 5 seconds so that you can skip that ad. In those 5 seconds, though, you see the brand name. You otherwise ignore it. Later, you get into the retargeting algorithm, you get a banner ad, now you see the name and the product, you recognized it from YouTube, but other than that, you're gonna ignore it because it's clearly an ad and you don't wanna be sold to. But then you get on Instagram, TikTok, you see an influencer that you follow that's talking about it. Now you're listening because someone you trust is telling you about the product. That will prompt you to go to search on Google. For those following along, this is impression number 4. You click through, you go to the website to do some research, impression 5, go directly to Amazon because you need to verify those reviews. You're skeptical of anything D2C. Then you click on that sponsored ad listing, read the reviews, and decide you're going to actually pick it up on your next grocery trip. Pick it up at the store, become a loyal consumer. So which of those ads drove the conversion? We don't know. And so that's why if you simply cut one of those upper funnel, who knows, maybe that influencer is what sent you down the spiral, but you may not have even listened to the influencer if you didn't see that original YouTube B-roll ad. And so when often as CMOs or leaders, we cut those channels that don't have that tangible direct ROI, but we could be degrading that entire funnel because it will get weaker later on. You may not have ever gone to Amazon if you didn't have that awareness ad. So what I advise all of our leaders to do is actually to trim the fat. So instead of cutting a full tactic, let's look at those high value consumers and focus our resources there. Who's the one that has the highest long-term value or the highest conversion rate, and shrink your funnel so that way you have the full playbook. And then when you do have the money, you can then expand and scale more efficiently.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Laura. John, can you share a strategy to optimize marketing spend and achieve cost efficiencies without hindering performance?
Yeah, no, I think Laura, just to tack on to what she said, which were great examples. I mean, I always say too, you can't cut your way to growth, right? And I think that the huge challenging time marketers have is such a reliance on these short-term metrics, especially a lot of times with CFOs, your investors. So I think the thing we really look at, and I think is a good segue, is what is bringing you incrementality. So a lot of platforms, to Laura's example, a lot of those platforms are going to take credit for a lot of those things. And that's not always the case. They should be taking credit, but everyone's so addicted to, okay, what is Facebook telling me? What is Google telling me? Because they're all taking credit for it. So what we've done is we've actually done a lot of deprecation studies, or we have, especially in markets that are smaller for us, let's say, somewhere in Europe, we'll turn off certain channels and we'll actually see if that is impacting short-term sales. And what we've seen is a lot of times it's not impacting short-term sales because we would have gotten those sales anyway. They're just taking the credit for us. Another example is we really spent a lot of time on especially with Amazon, on branded versus non-branded search. What we found is that, once you start to look for Therabody or a Theragun, you're probably not going to get swayed by the competition. So we didn't need to worry about branded search as much, and we would focus a lot more on non-branded, which brought in more people into the funnel. So I think it's really unpacking these measures and really understanding what is truly bringing you incrementality. Because when we to Laura's point, cut the fat, we were able to then reinvest that in upper funnel tactics, and ultimately that made our bottom funnel tactics a lot more efficient as well.
Great, thank you. Brandon, what metrics do you use to measure campaign success, and how do you track ROI?
Well, I think this question actually ties the previous two together pretty nicely, to the points that have been made. Focus is kind of magic when you have to cut. Everybody's gotten that terrible call from their CFO that says you need to to trim the budget. And when that call happens, the first moment of when you get past the panic, you move to, okay, well, what's really working? What is actually driving? What audiences, what tactics, what funnels are actually driving to a real business result? Then I can hold up and defend the rest of my budget and, frankly, chart a course for the organization to do better during this time when everyone else is probably cutting too. So, for us, our clients are primarily concerned with what is driving a real business result, what audiences, what tactics, what channels, what funnels get to the business result that the business really cares about. We all love having good awareness, measurements. We love having sort of these media metrics. But at the end of the day, if you can work with a partner that gives you foot traffic attribution, that gives you a clear sight into check growth, that gives you clear sight into market share shifts, the media platforms and partners that give you that visibility, and to John's point, everyone will take credit. So you have to take it all with a grain of salt and understand the context of your plan. If you can focus down to the audiences, the funnels, the specific efforts you're running that are driving to that real business result, validated by a partner that's giving you things like traffic attribution, then you can defend the rest of your budget and actually have marketing be a solution rather than a cost in the budget that everyone looks to cut when things get tough.
Yeah. And if I could add on to that, I know I work with a lot of startups and mid-size, and I can hear my startup friends in my ear saying, but I don't even have money for awareness. I don't have a TV ad. So what do I do? And when I think of that, I think of getting down to that foundation. It's my bread and butter. It's literally why I'm Foundation Collective. If you lay that strong foundation, you can scale so much faster and more efficiently. It's the unsexy thing. It's the making sure you have the right images, thumbnails, the bullets, the long copy, looking at your PDPs. But if you don't have that conversion, then you're not, all the things that you are to drive that traffic, they're not resulting in that sale. So D2C, if you're starting with a 1% conversion, getting it to 2 or even 3%, you're now doubling or tripling your sales simply by fixing your content. There's no external spend. It's only the cost of the resource, the graphic designer, to make the content and implement it. But you don't have to worry. If you're in that point where you have to cut all of your spend, take the time, focus on your brand fundamentals. At a previous company I worked with, we had that situation. We had to cut every single external dollar of spend for several months. We took that time to fix our content and we're able to grow our sales 25% on Amazon purely by fixing our content. So if you are in a situation where you do have to cut, everything we're saying is valued, whether it's trimming the fat or, as John mentioned, looking for that incrementality, but don't hesitate to also look at those unpaid things like your foundational content.
I want to actually, what Brandon mentioned earlier about the CFO, how do you communicate ROI to senior leadership in a clear and compelling way?
Yeah, I can jump in on that. I mean, I think that a lot of times in my experience that CMOs get very nervous about reporting, and they get very nervous about sharing. I think that the most important thing is to bring them along on the journey. We meet every single week with our leadership, and we review set metrics, how they're going, where their opportunities, where their challenges, where we might need to shift funding. So, templates are great, reports are great. A lot of times people don't read them. So I think having a forum where you can bring people along, there's no surprises, you're aligned on metrics, you're reporting on them, and you kind of have that protected every week. I have found really brings people along and really allows us to have conversations ongoing and to really be able to all be kind of rowing in the same direction.
Yeah, it's so often that you're looking at short-term ROI. You've got to look at that long-term and that impact to total business. Marketing efficiency ratio is one way to do it. Your total revenue divided by your total marketing to ensure that you may have an impression that's driving to your D2C. You have no idea until you measure it. It may also be impacting your in-store sales, your Amazon sales, your other external pure plays. And by cutting that, you actually may be cutting your traffic elsewhere, even though you're considering it a D2C attribution. So look at it holistically. I know it's hard to do because it's more of that marketing math fluffiness, but it's critical because if you're cutting, again, looking at a specific channel, specific tactic, there are going to be impacts and halos to the other sides of your business.
Just to add to that for a second, Laura, you said foundational building, and John, you just sort of mentioned it too. I don't think you can wait to have this conversation when things are bad. You have to set the tone for we're all on the same page of how we're going to measure success, that we're all agreeing that these partners have valid metrics that are pulling through, that this funnel works. That way, when things are tough, you can actually have a real conversation and you're on the same page about, the standards that you're looking at. I would also argue that if you can work with the kind of partners that help you with more of the funnel than just one piece, walled gardens get really tough in these conversations because you're looking at a completely different set of metrics. People are comparing and taking credit for everything. If you can have some of that top funnel, some of that mid, some of that bottom funnel, with an integrated view of how people are actually pulling through, that makes it a lot easier for a non-marketer to accept the results you're giving them, because it's sort of all one story from one set of partners versus I'm comparing likes to reach to impressions to God knows what across 100 different vendors.
Mm-hmm. And Brandon, John, I'd love to know if you experience this too, but often I see what we call thrashing of, because we have these regular touch bases on the ROI or a report is due, it is easy to look at it and cut it, but we didn't give it the opportunity to actually let it optimize. And when I'm then tasked with, well, now we need to change the creative, or we need to cut this budget or change the targeting, we then lost all the efficiencies that we were building through the algorithm. And so I know it's painful to let it sit, but do you ever get that from your CFOs of, we now have this number, therefore take this action, but on the other side, you're saying we need to wait, we need to keep letting it go?
Yeah, that's what goes along with a lot of data and information, right? And people sometimes thinking marketing is purely a science. I have an example of recently we kind of overperformed in a month and had some cost savings. And it's like, great, you can give it back to the business. And it's like, well, it's actually going to reinvest that because we're heading into the holiday period, and so we don't want to leave anything on the table in the next few months. So I think there's always going to be that tension, but I think if you can show that we are how we're measuring those top funnel things as well, and I think start to better understand, the conversion window, right? Like we have a more expensive product, right? So if you're going to look at one of our top end Theraguns, it might take, like you said, many touches, and it could take upwards of 30 to 45 days. So we also start to know, as we've tested into these things when to expect sales. So yeah, I mean, we just started a campaign, and as people start to look at sell-through data and they're like, oh, is it working? Is it not? It's like, yeah, we need to give it. We're not realistically going to know until after Black Friday, or where we really are. So I think that having those conversations and having the forum too, I think helps. But it is on the CMO to really have the confidence as well, and really have a clear strategy and measurement. And I would just add that on the last thing is that you need to have some simple measurements, right? We all know there's so much data now, and you can get lost in a lot of this. So I also think it's important to have a few key metrics that that you're able to, we've all aligned on what we're kind of going to be sitting within, so people start to feel comfortable as well, because I think we can easily get lost in way too many things to measure.
Yeah, and I know we're taking this, but I'd love to add on to this, because I know I can hear now the CFO talking to me about it, because John, you hit it on the head. You have to measure with intent and a purpose, not measure for sake of measuring. And I'll give you an example of time on site. We hear about that one fairly often. And I could argue a high time on site is amazing. It means we have engaging content. People want to learn more. They're exploring. I could also argue high time on site is horrible. It means people are not finding the information they want. They're frustrated. I mean, this is literally what we're calling marketing math. I just put a story behind the two. And so if you align on the intent of that measure and the action you would take based on the result, it will help everybody be expectation set, clear direction by the time you get to that measurement.
And I think you're totally right. And when you get down to it, those immediate snapshots, the individual data points can be a bit dangerous, right? People can take them out of context. They don't understand the purpose of them. It's our job, I think, as a CMO to connect the dots between timelines, between tactics, and understand how we get to an outcome. And just to your point, the last point you made, John, having metrics that are actually meaningful to the business that would be said in an earnings call are super powerful. If you can move past just the media metrics that we typically rely on as indicators, and move to this drove traffic, this drove check growth, this drove frequency, this drove something real, that even if you have to add the context of how we got there, the media steps that led us to that point, those are much more useful and meaningful for a CFO, for a board, for a CEO than, our impression count is up this month.
Right. So let's shift gears ever so slightly, but let's talk about AI's transformative impact on marketing. We know that AI offers new ways to optimize campaigns and personalize experiences and improve efficiency. With that in mind, back to ROI, how are you, Laura, for instance, how are you using AI for ROI optimization and productivity without sacrificing creativity?
This is a great question. And, there are literally a lot of playbooks on AI, there really is no right way to do it. I personally view my AI as my thought partner. I adorably love my robot. It's great for generating the ideas when I'm stuck or when I need a new perspective. So I like to use the AI tools to really help refine, rework, reframe. I've never been able to use the outputs exactly as is. They always need a human touch. It's very much a trash in, trash out. If I give it garbage information or not a good prompt, I'm not going to get anything good back. So it is a lot of trial and error, literally a lot of talking to it as if this was a partner really in my room. But for productivity, for example, my favorite way is to just dictate a stream of thoughts during a walk with my dog. And then I ask AI to put some structure behind it for clarity. That allows me to remain in this frame of creativity, and I can start to diverge, but then my AI tool then helps me converge and organize. And also, it's like I'm telling somebody a story and they're telling me what the themes are. So I find it really helpful for that productivity, but also it does lend itself to creativity, because I can put in prompts of, tell me a diverse approach in neuroscience principles like reward receptors or guilt avoidance, which I never put in my advertising, but it will spit out a different perspective that I can then think of in this reframe. So my takeaway is there are playbooks, but there's no right way. Simply talk to the robot as if it were truly a partner in the room for you, and have that conversation to help you get over parts when you're stuck or give you a new perspective.
Excellent. Brandon, do you consult ethics experts or legal advisors during the implementation of AI tools or during the execution of AI-driven marketing strategies?
Well, I think anybody that says no is probably a little crazy. So the answer is yes. We're a little different than maybe some brands because we're a media platform, right? We're building AI into our media platform to optimize media buying, to optimize creative, to help you with versioning, to help you with all the things that, as a marketer, you need to do with scale and might be considered busy work or frankly too hard for a human being to do on their own. So absolutely. We've got ethical and legal advisors helping us at every step of the way to understand how we can implement these things in a way that's good for marketers, but is going to keep them safe, is going to keep us as a platform, a media platform, safe, and is going to lead to the outcomes we're trying to drive, which is those real business results like traffic that our clients are seeking.
Great. John, what steps do you take to ensure that your team is adequately trained and skilled? And what are the realistic expectations of AI and change management?
Great question, and a huge topic right now. I think the most important thing is you have to lead by example. And I think that if you're going to pretend that this is something you're going to delegate down to your organization to somehow figure out, I think is a huge mistake. So really starting with at the top and making sure people feel open about the fact that we're using AI. We use Copilot. And I said, just like we say back in the day, if someone had a question, I'll Google that. Hey, let's ask Copilot. This is what I'll literally say to my team. I have an idea, and this is what Copilot and I came up with. And it's like really, putting it out there. Also, so people know that it's coming from Copilot, that we have to double check this, that this is not necessarily should be taken verbatim, but I think we need to normalize it. And we really need to, as Laura said, it's your friend, it's your helper. And, we should really be open about using it so we all learn together. And I think that really you have to, as a leader, you have to be on top of what's happening, on top of the tools, and working closely with your CTO on policies. And, as Brandon said, the ethics around it as well, and being very careful how it's being used, especially when you're making work and creative. But I'm all about how do you really normalize it and make it a part of the conversation day to day.
I think the Google analogy is a great one, John. It took years for everyone to figure out how to use Google properly, how to integrate it into their daily lives. It wasn't an overnight thing. AI is the same way. It's got quirks, it's got benefits, it's got disadvantages. It needs to be checked to make sure it's not, imagining things that aren't true. And especially if you're integrating it into your tools, So we look at AI as extra hands that can do things that it's almost impossible for a human being to do. I'll give an example because you gave some great examples, Laura. We're getting ready to integrate check data, POS level data from our clients so we can actually help them drive check growth through their media programs. That's really complicated. That's really hard to understand the levers with particular audiences using media to drive check growth. There's so much data to comb through that having humans do that takes forever. And it changes by the minute, by the promotion, by the quarter, by the media plan. So we're looking at AI as a tool that actually will create these efficiencies that are almost unheard of just to have people do the work. We want to empower the people to do their best work rather than, have AI replace people. And at the end of the day, you can use, I think, tools like this when they're applied properly, just like Google, so you can actually get the full advantage of it and realize that you can have an army of marketers doing something that would have been impossible 2 years ago using these amazing tools.
Laura, I have a question for you. This came through the live chat. Can you describe a specific case where AI tools helped you do something that you wouldn't have worked through without it?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I write a lot of just overarching brand strategies. So when business comes to me, they often have a great product that has proof of concept, meaning they're in market and they have the sales. They have some level of data, whether it's through e-com platforms, or if they're lucky, they have panel or store data. And when they bring it to me, they have they have traction, they have ideas, they have funding, and they don't have that structure. And what I'm able to do is learn from them, literally audio interviews. Let's talk about the business, brain dump. Just tell me about your consumer, your value proposition. What are you hearing from your retailers? I can then put those inputs into AI and they can help, again, put that into that final structure. But then what I like to do is overlay, okay, now I am a 40-year-old mother who shops pet specialty. I see that my dog has digestive upset. Here are my motivations and drivers. Now tell me, how would you frame up that initial impression? How would you frame up then that conversion driving message? And how can I then retain them? And it will spit that back probably a 70% great funnel for me to start thinking about. And then I can overlay from this brand's perspective, how do we make it unique to this specific brand? And so what I'd say my favorite, if you are looking for the keyword to put into your chat friend, I would say neuroscience. That one really helps you understand the psychological behavior behind it so that you can ensure that it is in both your tacticking, your targeting, and your measuring.
So going into 2025 now, what advice, overarching maybe advice, would you give other CMOs in regards to what we talked about with ROI and AI? Laura?
Sure. Thank you. I would love to tell my fellow CMOs to first set that strong marketing foundation. It's so easy to get distracted by the shiny pennies, and I'm sure there's going to be so many more tactics to come that are brand new in 2025. But stick with those fundamentals first. Build a very clear strategy with those tactics and measures that are intended, and you have a clear action you will take from them. So again, you don't get distracted. From there, you then have your playbook. You can then measure, I'd say weekly or monthly, make big decisions quarterly, unless things are clearly going off the rails. But for there, you then can stay focused. Focus is going to be the key as all of these new brands pop up, heavier competition, crazy retailer dynamics, and all of these economic pressures.
Great. Thank you, Laura. John, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to language and being on the same page on what we're measuring, what we're talking about here. Just our example, we're focused a lot on profitability, being private equity backed now, and just conversations around costs and really understanding, what do things cost, what are total costs, what are all the inputs that go into a campaign. We all know that things like fees are raising on Amazon. So really, I think if a CMO, and especially with the CFO and CEO, can talk about get on the same page about what we've talked about measuring, but there's simple things like how much are things truly costing that a lot of marketers don't ever look at, and then it loses trust with CFOs and finance because they kind of say, oh, you love the strategy and creativity, but you're not really looking at how it's driving profitability. And I think we're going to continue to be held to high profitability goals through this next year until interest rates can start to come down. So I think that's going to be what we continue to look at.
Great, thank you. And Brandon, from your perspective, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I pick up two keywords from Laura and John here. One is focus. Focus is magic. If you can focus on the things that you have confidence are working, that changes the dynamic when you have to really narrow down into what's working for your business. So focus is really important. Do the things you know are working, and then the language has to be shared between you and your CEO, you and your CFO. And that language should be oriented ideally around something that they really care about in the business, what we call internally real business results. Mm-hmm. The thing that marketing is moving that is helping the business, like traffic, like check growth, whatever that fundamental thing is. Marketing should be an investment. And I think if you focus and you have the right language, shared language about those real business results, you become a partner to grow the business rather than something that could be cut.
That's great. Focus with all the distractions out there. Focus is great. I like that a lot for 2025. Well, that is all the time we have for today. Susie and Jeremy will answer questions that came through the live chat. Laura, John, and Brandon, thank you so much for this conversation. It was great. We really appreciate it. So now over to you, Susie and Jeremy.
Thank you so much, Kelsey. We are back, and you might notice this is not Sarah Lebo. We have a special guest with us, the Taminator, Jonathan Tam, eMarketer's SVP of Marketing. Thought this was perfect to have a conversation on CMO priorities. What did you think of the panel?
First of all, thanks for bringing back my nickname that I haven't heard in about 30 years or so since that movie originally came out.
You're like 29, but okay.
Exactly. It was 30 years ago, right? I'm a robot that's from the future. I thought that session was great. I mean, obviously, all the things were spot on. I actually think the way that Brandon just ended that with, hey, marketing is an investment, and it shouldn't be cut, and you need to make sure that you have that shared language with the CFO so that they understand the purpose of that is so important. It's obviously something that we do here a lot, that I've done all throughout my career. In fact, when I don't know if you saw it in the chart of the day, probably about a week ago, we put out a chart that said the CFO is most skeptical, right? I think across 50% of organizations, which again is not surprising, but just speaks to how marketing needs to drive and develop ROI, right? And I think when you look across everything that marketing does, it's not about just direct sales. There is the importance of awareness. I think Laura and John were both saying that, right? You've got awareness, you've got branding. Those all play a role in the buyer journey.
There's different reasons for being here as a marketer.
Exactly. And it's not just that last click, it's everything else that builds up to it, right? So that's such a key part of it. I think they were spot on. It's great advice for all marketers.
I mean, right, you really do have to justify the cost, especially in this age of AI. It can't just be like, just trust me, I've done this before, just give me the budget and you're going to thank me later. It would be interesting if you ever got to work with a CFO like that, but they might not have their job that long, right?
Usually when you work with a CFO like that, you're not working with that CFO for very long. Either you or them, something's gone wrong there, right? But I think as marketers, we've been looking to get out of this do more with less trend that has been building over the last 2 to 3 years. And I think, unfortunately, there is no end in sight there. But it's not all bad news, right? Like doing more with less actually is possible now with AI out there, right? The efficiency gains, again, I think Laura mentioned it, it was great, right? AI is that assistant, but it still requires that human touch. And Brandon was saying, it just allows you to do things so much faster, right? And the adoption of it now is just picking up so much more.
And so many different use cases, right? Across every industry, across every function.
Absolutely every marketer should be using this now, right? If not every individual. My kids use it, right? Yeah. And they're not marketers for a different purpose. Right?
They're not marketers yet.
Exactly. Well, they are. They try and sell me on stuff all the time. So they're marketers in their own way, really. But yeah, there's just so much applicability for it, whether it's for brainstorming or summarization, or even, again, I think Brandon was mentioning all the complex tasks and wading through data and cleaning up and organizing. It's just a great tool.
Can you think of a use case, sort of? I know we heard about it as well through the panel, but what is a use case, like a specific? I can think of a lot in retail. What is one that you would think about more geared towards marketing, where you wouldn't have necessarily been as successful if it wasn't for AI?
For AI, I don't see it as doing anything new, but it is doing it so much faster, right? Mm-hmm. So we use it all the time internally here to build and understand new personas and new industries and about companies, right? Where competitive intelligence, all of that before is hours, if not weeks, of clicking and doing that manual research and interviews, qualitative, quantitative. And now you can use the AI to say, hey, I am targeting a SVP of research at a retail company. Tell me what are their key needs and their interests and the task that they're doing. And at least use that to start to vet against what we know in the conversations that we're having, and then match it back to our own messaging. I think the other part is from a creative standpoint, not like design creative, but even messaging variation and personalization and all the different variations. Once you have solid foundational messaging, now it's like, okay, now give me that, but slant it towards when I go after ad tech, or if I go after retailers, or if I'm looking at it from a brand marketer at a CPG, how would this message change? All of that.
So many marketers I know talk about one-to-one personalization, and the reality is maybe they were sending out 3 variations of a message, and I think now it looks like we're closer to hitting that vision of being able to actually really do that.
Refine, repeat.
Exactly, right? It's personalization at scale starting to come alive. There is still work that has to be done, and you have to create those conversations. But before, it was like, hey, I want to go after this brand new segment. And it was like, well, we don't have any of the research to support that or the messaging. And now we can spin that up pretty quickly.
I thought it was interesting. One study that we looked at from BCG looked at among CMOs, and a lot of things like optimism, confidence, curiosity, all of those numbers went up year over year, 2023 to 2024. And worry and anxiety kind of went down. So everybody is like, you know what, I might actually still have a job. I can spend that time on value-added analysis and like what makes you, right? So
yeah, I think it was actually this time last year in this exact setting, you guys were like, oh, our marketer's worried about their job. And thankfully, I'm still here, so I wasn't. And that
was May, like last year. It was a long year.
It's been a while.
But
anyways, so we
and
still
you've
got
been
6
busy.
months. But we've been busy. But actually, like AI, now it's leaning into AI and adopting AI now. And in fact, that's kind of what we've seen here. Not only are we using it internally, but we've actually been working on something externally as well to add to our product.
Wait, do you have something to show us? Are the rumors true?
Yeah. So we are going to launch it here, and it's not going to be. We're still working on. It's still going to be available in early 2025. But I'd love to show a little video clip of what we've been working on for AI search as part of our product.
Let's do it.
In early 2025, eMarketer is launching AI Search, a faster, smarter way to get answers to your marketing, advertising, and commerce questions. Type in the question you're researching, like, which type of digital advertising is growing fastest? And watch our AI generate a response based exclusively on eMarketer research. You can see exactly which piece of research the AI-generated results are referencing, and browse recommended questions also AI-generated. If you want to dive into the normal search results, you'll find them just below. AI Search can help you get to answers and decision-making faster. Available only on Pro Plus.
I'm so excited about this. I'm on the pilot, and I've been using it at the office to try and help get together a lot of our activity.
You can use it already?
Yeah? You're not on the pilot?
I'm not in the wait. How did you
Jerry,
how did you make this
people on the pilot. You're not on the pilot?
Okay.
Your human touch is so valuable that actually we don't want to disrupt your process with AI.
Okay, clearly you're in marketing.
Yeah. No, but this beta that we're in is actually really exciting for us, right? So we're starting to pilot this right now internally as well as externally a bit, but really we're excited about AI search for our customers because it is just a faster, more intuitive way to research questions, and it is only with eMarketer data. So all of the results are credible, they're relevant, and our customers can feel extremely confident that they can go put this into their strategy, their pitch decks, their presentations with the same.
And I've been going into Pro and doing these complicated questions, and it's coming right on. And it's even showing me different sort of data sets from the different forecasts combined with primary research stuff that we have. I mean, it's just been amazing.
You're just really rubbing it in now at this point, but okay.
What can I do?
Well,
no, it's fine. No, it is exciting.
So Jeremy, we will get you access earlier. For our customers, we're looking at this as part of our Pro Plus offering in early 2025. Awesome. Much more to come on this, but we're really excited because it really speeds up that access to insights. And like you said, Susie, we produce so much for our subscribers, whether it's data, charts, forecasts, reports, and the ability to find that in a natural language query and to unsurface all of that. I think is going to be a real game changer.
And it answers, it actually answers the question and then refers you to reports and charts thereafter. So it's amazing.
Susie's trying to transition to the marketing department clearly here, but that's fine. If anybody thinks that Jeremy should get access, please write it in the chat. Try to help me out. And next up, Yuri Wormser is going to be leading our analyst-led panel, Indestructible Data and Targeting Strategies for 2025. So just join Yuri by clicking on Next Session above the chat on your right. And don't forget, you might need to refresh your browser. See you in a second.